Welcome back to EDIT 640. It's Joe again here to present this week's module on editing and continuity for instructional video productions. In this lesson, we'll learn about organizational strategies that improve editing efficiency. We'll take a look at when it's conventional to use straight cuts and when it's more appropriate to use transitional effects. Spoiler alert, we don't use transitions very often. And finally, we'll examine numerous examples of continuity issues and explore various techniques that promote production consistency. Organizing your footage begins before the camera ever rolls. You know you need to have a plan for the kinds of shots you want, and that's effectively what the storyboard does. But you also need a list of the exact shots arranged not in runtime order, how the audience sees them, but in actual production order, which means by location as the logistics allow. This is especially important for outdoor shots where natural lighting is impossible to duplicate on multiple days. To make sure you shoot everything you need at each location, you need a shot list, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a checklist of each shot on your storyboard, arranged in the order that is most practical to shoot. What else do you need? Well, you need a clapper. Even if you're just clapping with your hands, that audio spike that it makes on the waveform allows you then to synchronize two different clips if you happen to shoot them simultaneously in multicam. At the very least, clappers, even just a homemade chalkboard or even a notebook with the scene number and the take number, will at least help you find your take later on. And that management is really important. You should also note that there are a lot of really cool apps, both on Android and on iOS, that allow you to use your tablet or even your smartphone as a clapper. They even have a button you can press on that makes an audible clapping sound. And again, this clap sound is really, really important when you're trying to do multicam editing because it allows you just to line up those two waveforms and the two clips are perfectly synchronized. What else do you need to do? Well, you need to log your shots. What does that mean? Let me put it to you this way. Let's say you just finished a couple hours of shooting and many of your takes or many of your shots required multiple takes. How do you know which take is actually the one that you want to use? You used a clapper or you used a notebook and numbered your takes so you have everything organized. When you go back and look at the footage, you can see each take numbered separately. But how do you know which one was the one you really, really want to use? Does that mean you have to rewatch every single take? No, that's not efficient. Instead, you should have a notebook or a clipboard or a smartphone or tablet app open while you're shooting. And typically this is done with an assistant. But the task is simple. When you get the take that you want, your talent does exactly what they need to do on camera and you're satisfied, make sure you make a note about that particular take so that later on in the editing booth you can skip ahead directly to that particular take and start editing. This shot here is a review, of course. You all know that you need a storage framework for organizing your content. This is fundamental to any project, and there are two primary ways by which we tend to organize our projects. One is by sequence, where you take scene 1, scene 2, and scene 3 and create an individual folder for each one and then put your media assets inside each respective folder. Or you can do it by content type, in which you have a video folder, an audio folder, a graphics folder, and many others if you think they're necessary. The point is, whatever strategy you choose, make sure you have one. Don't just dump your stuff and scatter it all over your computer because you may not be able to find it. And worse, once you start creating that project file, and if you move it around on your computer and save it in a different directory, it may not be able to find those clips once you move them. So the safest thing to do always before you start capturing any footage is to set up your storage framework in advance. Make a project folder and then put subfolders in there either by sequence or by content type. You decide, and then as you shoot and acquire your clips, put them in the appropriate folder. And the cool part about this is that once you get to the editing timeline and you go into your Project Assets tab, this is in Premiere Elements, you can actually import that entire folder, and what it will do, it will then create these bins inside your Project Assets tab automatically, so you don't even have to go to this pull-down menu right here and select New Folder to create these manually. It will put them in there automatically based on whatever schema you designed in your storage framework on your computer. And this is very, very efficient. Let's talk about cut edits. Cutting is designed really to do either of three things, and sometimes all three. It's designed to simulate real time. It's designed to allow you to change camera angles. And for cutaway footage, it's also designed to give you an opportunity to show the viewer complementary footage, footage that aligns with whatever the dialogue track is. That's the purpose of cutting. And for instructional video production, we tend to do mostly cut edits. That's not to say we don't use transitions occasionally. We do. And I'll show you some examples of that later on. But most of what we do simulates real-time instructional sequences, and we're doing straight cuts for most of those. Here's an example. Andrea Powell is a host on the Lowe's homepage and does a lot of these do-it-yourself type of productions, instructional productions. It's really an instructomercial, because obviously there's some commercial value to this, but they do a pretty good job with this, and I'll show you some of this. But here's an example of what we remember as our match cut. You have an opening host shot followed by a little hands-on sequence where she's looking at the camera, and then the second she looks down at her tool, the next shot cuts directly to that. In this case, she's got a paint roller and a tray and a bucket, and etc., and you can see all of that in there. And this is done very seamless, but what's really cool about it, and you'll see this when I play this for you, is you'll see her shoulder right here move. She'll make a gesture with that, and that's an action on what is otherwise just kind of a static talking head. But when she moves her shoulder, then we cut into this next shot here. And the key takeaway, even though that's very, very subtle, the key takeaway is to always cut on the action. And so let's take a look at that, and I'll show you what I mean.
Hi, welcome back. So last time we started work on our beautiful new pebble mosaic tile accent wall by prepping our walls. So we measured the height for our pebbles, we removed the trim, we cleaned the walls, and then we covered the paint with a waterproof sealant. So let's get back to it. All right, let's take a look at the tools and materials that we'll be using. We've got scissors to cut our pebble mosaic tiles. We have pre-mixed thin set along with...
Okay, that was real subtle, but she lifted her shoulder and then started extending her hand downward, and that's the type of action that creates a great opportunity for a match cut. We've already done this, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think they do that very well there. So we understand the purpose of cutting very well by now, but we haven't talked a whole lot about transitions. So all we know is that we don't use them that often, but it's probably a good time now to talk about when it is appropriate to use them. You know what transitions are. They're the fancy wipes and fades and flashes and flips and rolls and all kinds of other cool effects that transition from one clip to the next, or to or from black video. We use transitions in instructional video and in most Hollywood productions when there's been some significant type of change. Typically, there's been a change in time, in place, or in content, and I'll show you some examples of each. Here's one for time. Take a look at this.
Hey, welcome to Gears. You know, a while back we rescued an old '69 International cab-over truck from the junkyard and immediately began to bring it back to life by sticking in a hot Duramax diesel engine from PPE and a custom air suspension from Kelderman Air Ride. Roll that footage, Matt.
Okay, there's one.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to turn the volume down here. You can see we have a lot of transitional effects here. There's one. Had a nice cross dissolve there. That was a straight cut there. That was a pan left, real quick pan left created. There, of course, we had another transitional effect. Very, very up-tempo transitioning here. And that certainly is reinforced by the audio soundtrack that we have here, this heavy metal guitar track. Lots of flash, very, very fast, up-tempo type of transitioning cadence here, and that's all deliberate. Let me go ahead and turn that off. So obviously this is a process that's being played back. They're doing this installation, and in the process of doing that, they're skipping ahead in time often. it would be agony to sit here and watch the whole thing in real time. So they use these transitions to signify to the viewer that they're skipping ahead in time. And that's a perfect demonstration of when a transition is very appropriate because time has changed. Let's look at something else. Okay, in this example here from Home Garden Television, I want you to notice how the cuts are only on the dialogue shots. The shots where there are changes in place are actually transitions. So you'll see what I mean here. Take a look at this.
Really good at surprising people and taking it over the top. But Jamie Dury is practically HGTVing all of us on the crew as well. Listen to this list. We knew that we were going to do the garage because that's what Sam and Seth wanted. But I figured there was going to be a pergola and maybe a patio area. But Jamie's taking it even further. He's doing a whole deck.
Notice there's a lot of animation in this. Animation is actually a change in content type, and that's why we have a transition assigned to every one of those. But watch what happens coming up here.
Vegetable boardwalk that goes right through the backyard, which is basically like a vertical garden, as well as what he says here, plants, plants, and more plants. You can never have too many plants in a Jamie Dury design.
I think they were just expecting us to do their garage. You know, but this is HGTV.
Okay, notice, do you see that flash? That's a transition here to a shot of the house. Now watch, we're going to come back to the characters at any given time, whether it's the host or the interview subjects. It's just going to be a straight cut. But yet every time we go to the house, it's a flash. And that's a very, very subtle way to use transitions to indicate a change in place, yet still maintaining some continuity with these cut edits going back to the dialogue between these different subjects.
Okay, you ready to go through the back side of the house?
We're ready.
Okay, there's a flash, transition. Now we cut right back. Transition. Transition.
Oh my God.
Cut right back.
Look at this.
Cut right back.
This is unbelievable.
Anyway, you get the point. So transitions then can be used when there's been a change in time, or in this case, a change in place. You can also use a transition whenever there's been a change in content, like we saw in the previous shot where we had a change between animated footage and then real-time talking head footage. With this host, there was always a transition applied to the animation. What you're going to see in this sequence here from this dreadful OSHA training video that I just had to watch to get certified for workplace safety. Yes, this is a forklift video. Nevertheless, what you're going to see here is a transition being used when we move or we change a content type from regular video footage to, in this case, an electronic document. You're going to see it roll into screen view here.
Or hazardous areas. These areas should be properly marked, and any vehicle not meeting the proper safety qualifications should not be operated in these areas. Consult the OSHA standard.
And that's it right there. You just saw that page roll right into place there. That's all I wanted you to see here. You have what effectively here is a screenshot with some text on top of it. That simply transitions in on top of that other footage. Obviously, that's a change in content type, so it's logical to use a transition there. Now let's move on and talk about the elephant in the room, and that is continuity. We've mentioned continuity many times in the course here already, and most of you have a pretty good sense of what it means. But just to make sure we all understand, there are a lot of different kinds of continuity, and there are a lot of different opportunities for continuity to become a problematic issue. And the resolution to all of them is real simple. You want to be consistent in everything that you do. In the action, in the screen direction, that's not directing as in the director yelling at actors, that's the screen movement or motion on screen. What direction, what's the vector motion? You remember the 180-degree rule. You want continuity in lighting. After all, if you shoot a subject in front of an outdoor setting at 5 p.m., and then you wrap for the day and then realize you missed a shot, if you go back to 5 p.m. the next day, the lighting might be different because there might be cloud cover. What do you do then? Those are very, very challenging situations, and so you want to avoid them by always shooting on site everything that you need so that you don't have to go back, and that's why those shot lists are so very important. Continuity of set. Clearly, you don't want props moving around, you don't want backgrounds changing, you don't want wardrobes changing, and of course Tempo is a continuity issue as well, and we'll talk about all of these within the context of some examples here. Let's start off first with obviously one of the easiest ones to understand, because we've been doing this pretty much the entire course, and that's continuity of action. When you have two clips right next to each other and there's motion in one and motion in the other, then you cut right on that action, usually to a different angle, and hopefully those actions become continuous once you get them timed up right. Here's a real quick example of a match cut. I know we saw one earlier, but since we're getting close to Halloween here, this is very appropriate.
Talking, have some fun with it. Now, you could always pull out your steak knife and get out there and do some carving, but how about using a drill? Power is a wonderful way.
Okay, here they come. There are a bunch of match cuts starting right there. He looks down, his hand touches it.
Who doesn't like working
Here we go.
You know, I also have a few spatula bits. I have some coring bits at home. All you want to do with this spatula bit here is stick it into your pumpkin, hold it there steady. And this sucker is cool.
Okay, and obviously by now we all know the match cut very, very well, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. Okay, let's move on to continuity of direction. We remember a lot of this from our study of the 180-degree rule. And that dealt mostly with camera placement, and related to that is camera movement. We can also move a subject in the screen, and I want to show you an example that does both of these. Take a look at this Jack Nicklaus training video.
The Golf Channel Academy has come to the Jack Nicklaus Academy here in beautiful Jupiter, Florida.
Okay, notice that the subject is walking toward the camera, yet the camera is staying the same distance away from him. What does that mean? Well, obviously the camera guy is moving backwards at the same cadence that the subject is moving forward, and that is really, really hard to do without bouncing the camera around. So kudos to the camera person here.
It's a perfect day for instruction. We're about to spend 30 minutes with the greatest champion this game's ever known. Whether you're a mid-handicapper, high-handicapper, low-handicapper, Jack Nicklaus is here with a gift of instruction to help your game get better. Now, Jack, it's been interesting watching.
Okay, what I want you to see now is our subjects have stopped moving for the most part, just hand gestures and dialogue from this point out. But the main camera is still continuing to move, so there is a continuity of camera movement here. However, this is shot in multicam. There's another camera over here on the left-hand side, somewhere over here out of frame that we can't see, obviously, shooting toward Jack. And I want you to watch how that camera is static, yet the other camera remains moving.
You over the years, 51 years ago, you won your first amateur championship, 19 more majors beyond that.
Okay, I'm going to turn the audio down here just a little bit so we can watch this camera. It just kind of hovers around, floating. Notice how it conveniently got rid of that shadow. Did you see that? He saw that there was a shadow there and very gracefully moved up and around. So now we have kind of a classic two-shot there. And even this camera still has a slight zoom effect applied to it, but it's mostly static. But this one continues to move. Anyway, the point is, the secret to continuity is to make a decision and then repeat that strategy consistently throughout a piece. Where you run into major continuity issues with direction, with screen motion, is when you start it in one clip and you don't continue it in another clip. So if you make a pattern, if you establish a pattern, make sure you continue it, you repeat it consistently. Set continuity refers to the consistency of wardrobe, props, lighting, blocking, background, and any other type of on-the-set inconsistency that could be noticeable by viewers. Set continuity is a trap that even major Hollywood blockbusters fall into, especially for very complex productions. For example, let's take a look at one of the most revered films in all of history, and that is George Lucas's Star Wars. And I want you to take a look at the inconsistencies that are noted, and I didn't put this together. This is assembled by various people on the internet, well-known continuity mistakes. But it gives you an idea of the kinds of issues that are going to come up in your productions. I know this is Hollywood, but in your instructional productions, you're going to face these same kinds of issues. So let's see some of these non-example mistakes as they were made in Star Wars.
Ship, where is the ambassador? Come on, Commander, tear this ship apart until you found those plans and bring me the passengers. I want them alive.
Luke? Tell Uncle if he gets a translator, be sure it speaks Bocce.
Doesn't look like we have much of a choice.
See the shrubs? Now you don't. Where'd they go?
What is it?
Watch that cove. First it's there,
Father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight.
and then it's gone.
Not as clumsy or random as a blaster.
I saw part of the message.
Okay, look at the props on the table.
Seem to have found it.
General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars.
Now there are only a couple left.
Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire.
Here's a good outdoor lighting sequence.
Do you really think
Look at that shaded area. Watch what happens.
Here that'll take us to Alderaan?
Most of the best freighter pilots that will be found here only watch a step. This place can be a little rough.
I'm ready for anything.
First, those Jawa, as they were called, did you remember that? First they were in the shade, and now suddenly it's sunny again. So again, this is a perfect example of a variety of different kinds of continuity issues that even Hollywood producers face, and you certainly will have to deal with some of these in your own productions. Here's a more modern continuity issue. This one is taken from CNET's channel, and in this sequence here, I want you to see what I think is not a very good decision to take your host from one shot and move his position in a second shot, obviously in the same type of restaurant setting here, but it's a little disorienting. Here's what I mean. Watch this. We'll watch the beginning of it, and then I'll skip ahead.
Who will take that third position in the running with
Okay, we're in a classic setting here. You got a couple in the back here. He's talking about whatever.
iOS and Android. Now the discussion is beginning to tilt a little bit away from who.
Okay, I'll turn this down. So there's some talking head there. Now we go to a bunch of cutaway footage. But if I skip ahead here to, I think, about the minute 30 mark, watch what happens.
And we'll talk about Microsoft's specific prospects in the future.
Okay, now what do you notice? Where's everybody else? There were a bunch of people in that shot to begin with, and it sounded very, very noisy, and now it's a dead zone, almost as if these two people back here have been staged. So clearly, here's an example of what not to do. Don't shoot part of your video on one day and then shoot the rest of it on another day. Plan to shoot everything in that particular sequence all at the same time, so you leave with every shot that you need. And that's why these storyboards and these shot lists are so important. Let's talk about tempo. Tempo is established by two things primarily in any production. The first is the pace of the cutting, how quickly you're cutting back and forth between different clips, and then of course the music. We've seen many examples already where a fast-paced production is established by fast music and quick cutting. However, I want to show you, kind of in contrast to that, what happens when you slow down and you have very little cutting, but you have very dramatic footage. And the dialogue is slowed down in pace with the lack of fast-paced music and the lack of cutting, and yet it works incredibly well. This next sequence is taken from the IMAX Blue Planet series, and I think you're going to be impressed. This is a sequence about the shuttle taking off from Cape Canaveral.
Environment which makes life possible here on Earth. We're now returning to space in a variety of craft. We call this Mission to Planet Earth.
Okay, notice how long this sequence goes without any narration. It's purely visual, and there are no cuts. And it's very obvious why they do this. The footage is so dramatic, you don't need to dress it up any whatsoever. You don't need to talk over it. You don't need a fast-paced track, and you can let it linger for a while before you cut to your next shot. Finally, I want to conclude with the granddaddy of all continuity videos. Most of you saw this in 604, but it's very relevant to repeating again in this class. It's a spoofy kind of short that makes fun of all the different kinds of mistakes that producers make when they forget about continuity. So I'll let the video speak for itself. You might remember some of this, and you might get a good laugh out of it still. The point is, however, remember the mistakes that are being illustrated here so that you don't make them in your own productions.
Okay, I'll bite. What's wrong? You've all been really quiet tonight, and I can't help but think I did something.
Son, we've been concerned about your videos lately.
My videos? What about them?
It's just, well, your editing lacks continuity.
What do you mean my editing lacks continuity?
Jack, when you edit a scene, you have to watch out for little things in the background.
Yes, I'm aware. I'm a film major.
I'm not sure if you are. In one of your videos, you had a soda can facing one way, and then when you cut back to the scene, it was facing the other way.
Oh, please. That's so tiny. Nobody notices that.
Don't be so sure, son. People can get distracted if something's not the way it was originally.
But I always check for continuity.
Like in a fight scene. If there's a speck of blood on the fighter's cheek, that little speck of blood has to stay there the entire fight scene.
I understand the concept, Father.
Well, there's another video of yours where your head is turned toward the camera.
Oh, let me guess. And when the shot changes, I'm looking the other way, right? That's a very common mistake that you'll see in a lot of movies, including some of the larger releases.
That still doesn't excuse you from getting sloppy in the editing room.
Sloppy? I spend hours on each video making sure every shot, every sound, every frame is perfect. How dare you call me sloppy?
We're only trying to help, son.
I don't need your help.
These pancakes are delicious.
Don't change the subject, Mother.
Don't talk back to your mother.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
You have got to learn to be more open to criticism, Jack. What was that?
Nothing.
That's right, nothing.
This is such bullshit.
You watch your mouth.
Why don't you watch all my videos and point out their flaws? Oh, wait. It's your favorite pastime.
You know what might calm everyone down? A family shot.
Yeah, Mom, I don't think a photograph of the family would calm me down much.
Oh, not that kind of shot.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I don't even remember what we were arguing about.
Oh, we were talking about how your editing lacks continuity.
Motherfucker!
Okay. How many examples of continuity did you see in there? Obviously, there are dozens, and you can spend hours just digging through that. But the point is, don't shoot sequences that end up with those types of editing problems. Well, that concludes this module on editing and continuity. I look forward to reviewing your homework assignments where you will create continuity bloopers. Those should be both entertaining and informing. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.